Welcome to Life Stories. What would you do if the people you trusted most, the ones you loved unconditionally, betrayed you in the worst way imaginable? Imagine discovering that your fiancé, the person you thought would share your future, was secretly in love with your own sister. And what if this wasn't just about love? What if it was about control, manipulation, and taking everything you've built? This isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of reclaiming your power, your life, and your story. Stick around because this journey is about to get real. Let's dive in. Taylor Monroe sat in the dim light of the apartment, her fingers moving across her phone screen with a precision she didn't recognize. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't even be looking at it. But the ping of Ethan's phone, a simple notification, had turned her world upside down. For months, she had been living in what she believed was the perfect life, the dream they had built together. Ethan, her fiancé. Everything seemed like it was falling into place. Until it wasn't. She had been curled up on the couch, trying to relax after a long week, sorting through color palettes for her next client presentation, when the message came in. A chime. A harmless sound. But Taylor's gut twisted, a knot growing in her stomach. She shouldn't have looked at it. She shouldn't have let curiosity drag her in. But there it was. A message from her sister Madison. Private booth at the Ivy, she'll love it. The words hung in the air, cold and suffocating. The Ivy? She remembered that place. The place where Ethan had taken her on their first anniversary. That intimate, dimly lit corner table where they'd whispered secrets and promises to each other. That was their place, not Madison's. Her heart skipped a beat. No, it couldn't be. But there it was, the message, the tone. The sender ID, Madison, her sister, the woman who had always been by her side, the one who had made Taylor laugh, wiped her tears, shared her dreams. But as she stared at the phone screen, the images in her mind began to twist. Madison wearing the dress Taylor had chosen for their engagement shoot, the same one she had let her borrow just a month ago for a charity event. And yet, there she was, posing in it, as if it was hers, as if she owned it, as if she owned everything. Taylor's breath caught in her throat. Betrayal wasn't a loud thing. It wasn't some dramatic event. No, betrayal seeped in, like the cold, silently eating away at the warmth you thought you had. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even sad. She was numb. A strange numbness washed over her as she placed the phone back where she had found it. There would be no yelling, no throwing things, no screaming. Instead, she walked calmly to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her hand didn't shake. It should have, but it didn't. There was only the cold, the realization. She had been erased. Quietly, methodically, and without a single word of warning. And that wasn't something she was going to allow. She texted Ryan, her best friend, her ex, the one person who knew her better than anyone. He had seen her at her lowest, at her most vulnerable. He was the only one who knew how to calm her, to steady her in the middle of the storm. "You awake?" she typed. Ryan's reply came in seconds, a promise of support. "For you, always. Set a reservation for me, the Ivy, Friday night. I want a table next to theirs." There was a brief pause before Ryan replied, a quiet understanding in his words. "I'll take care of it." That was how Taylor found herself standing at the edge of the room, watching Ethan and Madison sit across from each other in a private booth at the Ivy, just like she had with Ethan a year ago. Just like it was supposed to be. But it wasn't. Ethan was the first to look up, his eyes scanning the room, searching for something familiar. When they landed on her, he froze. Madison, ever so confident, didn't see her at first, but when she did, her smile faltered. They looked like they had rehearsed this moment, like they had been waiting for it. It sickened Taylor, the way they so easily slipped into their roles. The way Madison leaned toward him, her hand resting casually on his thigh. It was as if nothing had changed. As if Taylor wasn't here at all. But she was. She always had been. And tonight, she wasn't going to let them forget it. Taylor took a step toward them, her heels clicking on the polished floor. The sound was like a warning, and when she stopped beside their booth, the silence was deafening. "Madison," Taylor said, her voice smooth and steady, like a blade cutting through the tension. "I believe you remember Ryan." Ryan stood behind her, his presence strong and silent, just as she knew it would be. The air between them was thick, suffocating. Madison didn't speak, but Taylor saw the way her shoulders tensed. Ethan's face was pale, his jaw clenched, as if he could shrink into the booth and disappear. But Taylor wasn't done. "Ethan," she said, her gaze never leaving him, "I believe you forgot. I see everything." Ethan blinked, his breath catching in his throat. "What is this? What are you doing?" "I'm here for dinner," she said calmly, her words deliberately chosen to throw them off balance. "Just like you." The waiter approached them, sensing the rising tension. "Would it be possible to push these two tables together?" Taylor asked, her tone so smooth it was almost polite. Without a word, the waiter complied, pushing the tables together, creating a larger space for the conversation that was about to unfold. Ethan opened his mouth, but Taylor cut him off before he could speak. "Don't rewrite the timeline for my comfort," she said softly, her gaze never wavering. "I know exactly what's been happening." Madison, trying to hold on to whatever remnants of control she had left, crossed her arms and leaned back in her seat. "This isn't about betrayal," she said, a forced calm in her voice. "This is about a connection we couldn't ignore. It just happened." "A connection?" "A connection?" Taylor repeated, her voice rising slightly. "That's what you call forwarding him the reservation I made for our anniversary?" The words hung in the air for a long moment before Madison shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Taylor didn't wait for her to answer. "You didn't fall in love," she continued, her voice icy now. "You rehearsed this lie in my absence." Madison's lips trembled, but Taylor didn't let her speak. She turned toward Ethan, who was now visibly shaking, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "Funny how stealing always gets confused with winning," Taylor said, her words quiet but sharp. "And you've always been so good at stealing, haven't you?" The room was still. It wasn't just their silence. It was the weight of everything unsaid, the realization that everything they thought was theirs was crumbling before their eyes. Taylor didn't say another word. She simply stood up, straightening the fabric of her dress, and turned to Ryan. "We're done here." Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only for them to betray you in the most calculated way? What would you do if the very people you loved and trusted started taking everything from you? Your life, your future, your identity. As Taylor walked out of the restaurant, the truth was finally hers to reclaim. But at what cost? The next move was hers, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. What would she do with the power to rewrite her story? And who would be left standing when the dust finally settled? Taylor sat in her apartment, her fingers still trembling slightly from the confrontation. She had walked out of the Ivy like she owned the place, like she had reclaimed everything she had lost. But now, sitting in the silence of her living room, it all felt different. The anger she had felt moments before had dissolved into something colder, something much more dangerous. She stared at the small, untouched glass of wine in front of her. The red liquid glimmered in the low light, a sharp contrast to the stillness of the room. Every breath she took felt heavier now, as if the weight of what had just happened was slowly settling on her chest. She wasn't angry. She wasn't devastated. Instead, she felt empty. And that emptiness gnawed at her. It hollowed out her heart, making her question everything. It was as if she had been living a lie for so long, believing in a version of herself that didn't exist. The Taylor Monroe who had dreamed of a future with Ethan, the Taylor who had trusted Madison, who had believed that family and love were unbreakable. That version of herself was gone, swept away in a single night. But now she was left with a new question. Who am I now? Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, dragging her out of her thoughts. She grabbed it, her eyes narrowing when she saw Elias's name on the screen. She didn't answer immediately. She had spent the last few weeks thinking about how to confront everything, the lies, the betrayals, the stolen parts of her life, but nothing had prepared her for this. When the phone buzzed again, she picked it up, her finger hovering over the screen before she swiped to answer. "Taylor?" Elias's voice was calm, but there was a tension there, something unspoken, something heavy. "I need you to come down to the office tomorrow. We have a lot to go over." She didn't respond immediately. The words felt like a trap, but she knew he wouldn't ask her to come unless it was urgent. Something told her this wasn't just about the documents they had filed earlier. "I'll be there," she finally said, her voice low. The next morning, the city was drenched in the early autumn rain, the kind that made everything feel a little bit more suffocating. Taylor stood outside Elias's office, the cold air biting at her skin as she waited. She was on edge. Something was coming. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, the gnawing sensation that the betrayal she had already uncovered was just the beginning. When she stepped into his office, Elias didn't look up immediately. He was sorting through papers, and his office was its usual quiet, organized chaos. But the moment he saw her, his face tightened. "Sit down," he said softly, pushing a folder across the desk. Taylor sat, her hands gripping the edges of the chair. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of fear. Elias didn't answer right away. He opened the folder slowly, as though giving her time to prepare. He placed a document in front of her, but she didn't need to look at it to know it was about her. She felt it before she saw it, the shifting of power, the underlying threat in the air. "Taylor?" Elias began, finally meeting her gaze. "This changes everything." She looked at the paper. The words blurred together for a moment before she could focus. The document was a business proposal, one that looked oddly familiar, one that seemed to be written by Ethan. But this wasn't just any business proposal. This was an idea, a business that didn't belong to her. The realization hit her like a freight train. Ethan and Madison had been planning this for months, no, for years. This wasn't just a stolen love affair. This was an orchestrated effort to take everything she had, the restaurant reservation, the stolen moments. It was all part of something bigger. They had been scheming behind her back, using her, and all the while, she had been in the dark. "They're not just after you, Taylor," Elias said, his voice grave. "They're trying to erase you completely. Your name, your company, your legacy. They've been laying the groundwork for months." Her hands trembled as she picked up the document again. There it was, in black and white. Ethan and Madison were involved in an investment venture. It wasn't a coincidence anymore. It was a calculated move. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that her trust had been violated on a level she hadn't even considered. They used me?" Taylor whispered, her heart racing. "They used my name to start a business, to create a future that wasn't mine." Elias nodded, his face grim. "They've been siphoning from you, Taylor. They've taken everything from your name, your business, your legacy, and now they're preparing to go public with it." Her breath hitched, the weight of the revelation crushing her chest. "So what do I do now?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. She had spent so long trying to fix things, trying to repair what was broken. But this was different. This was war. Elias leaned back in his chair. "You fight back. You take everything they've stolen from you and make it yours again. But it won't be easy. They've already positioned themselves too well." Taylor stood up, her mind racing, her heart pounding with a fierce clarity. "I'll take everything back, but I'll do it my way." Elias watched her with a quiet respect. "You're not alone in this." "I know," Taylor said, her voice steady again. "But this time, I'm the one in control." How far would you go to reclaim your story when everything you've built is stolen from you? Would you fight back with everything you have, or would you let the past define you? Taylor's path to reclaiming what was rightfully hers was just beginning. But as she looked ahead, she knew one thing for sure. The fight would be ruthless, and she was ready to bring the fight to them. The only question now was, how far would she go? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Taylor stood at the front, her hands gripping the edges of the table, her heart racing but her expression unyielding. The case had dragged on for weeks, but she knew this was it, the final moment. This was where her story would either be rewritten or erased completely. On the surface, the court proceedings seemed like just another high-stakes battle over money and ownership. But underneath, it was something deeper. This wasn't about property or investments. This was about the people who had tried to take everything from her, the people who had stolen her life, her love, and her identity. And now, she was about to take it all back. Ethan sat across from her, his face tense but composed. He had been the picture of guilt and remorse throughout the trial, and yet, here he was, still trying to salvage what little was left of their relationship. Taylor couldn't look at him without feeling the weight of every lie he had told her, every moment he had stolen in the name of ambition. He wasn't the man she had fallen in love with. That man was gone, buried beneath the layers of deceit and betrayal. Madison was seated beside him, her eyes cold and unflinching, as if the world didn't matter but her version of it. The woman who had once been her closest confidant now sat there as a stranger, a woman who had stolen her future and tried to destroy her with a smile. The judge called the room to order, and for a moment, everything seemed to slow down. Taylor closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, remembering everything that had led her here. The sleepless nights, the whispered conversations in corners, the texts and emails that had revealed the dark truth of what had happened. But the hardest part had been the betrayal from her own flesh and blood. Madison had taken her love, her story, her future, and pretended it was nothing more than a twist of fate. But Taylor had learned that fate wasn't something that could be stolen. It was something that could only be reclaimed. When it was her turn to speak, Taylor stood tall, her voice steady, her words clear. "I don't want revenge. I don't want any of the things you've taken from me, but I'm here to take back what's mine. My name, my life, my story." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything she had fought for. Ethan's eyes flickered with a flash of guilt, but he didn't speak. Madison's lips twisted into a smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. She was calm, composed, as if this were all just a game, but Taylor wasn't playing anymore. She turned to the judge. "The truth is, everything they've done, every lie they've told, was built on the foundation of my trust. I gave them everything, my love, my future, my life, and they took it all, but they can't take who I am. No matter how hard they try, I will always be Taylor Monroe, and I will not be erased." The judge nodded, his eyes fixed on her. "This court will take everything you've said into consideration." It was over. There was no more fighting. Taylor had done what she came to do. She had reclaimed her story, her life, and her dignity. But as she left the courtroom, something inside her began to shift. It wasn't the victory that felt most real. It was the freedom. Freedom from the weight of what she had lost, from the burden of trying to rebuild a life that had been stolen from her. Freedom from the idea that she needed to make them understand. They never would. She walked out of the courthouse, the sun hitting her face as she stepped into the cool afternoon air. It felt different now, as if the world had finally opened up again. The future was hers to create, not to fix. Later that evening, Taylor sat on her balcony, the city stretching out beneath her. She had changed. She wasn't the woman who had stood by Ethan's side, believing in love and trust. She wasn't the woman who had thought her sister was her closest ally. She was something more, something stronger, something that had risen from the ashes of betrayal and come out the other side intact. Elias texted her later that night, a simple message. "You did it. You took it all back." She smiled, her fingers typing a response. "I didn't just take it back. I rebuilt it. I made it mine." And as she sat there, alone but not lonely, she realized the truth she had fought for all along. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that she was enough. She had always been enough. And now, for the first time, she could finally live her life on her own terms. What do you think Taylor's journey says about reclaiming your identity after being betrayed? Do you believe that, like Taylor, we can rebuild our lives even after everything is taken from us? If you love this story, comment 100 below. Where are you watching from? Share with us your thoughts and experiences. Feel free to share this story with your friends. Let's spread the message. Thanks for watching Life Stories.